As I introduce Shanti Das and Royce.
I get people that come up to me all the time and they're like, yo, don't you miss it? Or you want to go back to a label? And I'm like, you know what? I never understood what like Oprah and different people would say, like, you'll know when you receive your calling, right? And what it means to walk in your purpose. You know, this young man's purpose is still to give us the best music that he can possibly give, but I think he also has a deeper purpose, and it's to really inspire and challenge our culture and our community. So that's why we're here tonight. My first question for you, Royce, is did you ever face any challenges from an emotional health and wellness perspective, or you see that as a child with anyone from in your family, or any trauma that you have to deal with growing up in Detroit?
I had a tumultuous kind of relationship with my dad and my big brother. My dad was a disciplinarian, very firm, and I think the way he ran the household and the way he disciplined us would probably be considered child abuse at 2020. When I started going to therapy, which was about 8 years ago, I started going to therapy, and my therapist asked me a couple questions. I talked about a few things with me and my dad. One thing led to another. I'm in tears. So that let me know that it affected me more than I thought.
That's so dope that you were finally able to release.
Yeah, I didn't know I needed to.
It's funny you talk about compartmentalizing your feelings. I don't know how many of you guys know, but my father took his own life. And my dad was actually Indian culture, but my mom's African American. So in this country, your mom's black, your dad's black.
Oh, yeah.
It don't matter, right? And so my dad died when I was 7 months old. And I used to be embarrassed to tell people how my dad died. So as a kid, people would say, oh, where's your dad? How did he die? And I was just like, oh, he had cancer. Oh, he had a heart attack. And I, as a result, buried those feelings. Because I had a pretty good childhood, and I had a great run in the entertainment industry. But it wasn't until other things started happening in my life, right? And some other emotions that came into play, I think when I was on the upward trajectory of working in the entertainment business, because it's a tough-ass industry to work in sometimes, especially as a female working in hip-hop. So I started facing and dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety and different things, and it wasn't until then that I opened that drawer, that I tucked those feelings away for so long and finally started dealing with it. So I totally did it.
Yeah, and it was just talking to somebody in therapy, it helped me express myself a little bit better in my music too. It helped me become a better communicator. And it made me feel, because me and my dad, we always been cool, especially as an adult. Me and my dad, we sit on the phone and talk for hours about sports and all types of stuff. But I didn't know that these issues bothered me like that. But when I was able to let them out, it felt like a weight off my shoulder, and it helped me deal with just things a lot better.
That's why I tell people communication is so key, especially within your own household, right? We know for the most part, or in most situations, our parents love us, they want the best for us. But that's why we find ourselves butting heads with our parents, because they think that just saying, oh, hey son, you good? Or, I got you this, or I got you that, or make sure you're going to practice, or, paying your way through school, that's it. But no, you actually need to talk. If somebody asks you how you doing, don't just be like, oh, I'm good. If you're having a fucked up day, and excuse my language, I feel like I curse a little bit if I need to today in the trap museum. But don't say you're good and you're not good. That's the problem. And so that's kind of going to pivot me to the next question of when you started experiencing substance abuse issues in your life. So I'll read from this next question. Substance abuse is a big issue in society overall, our culture, and especially in our music culture, right? We see a lot of musicians that deal with recreational drugs, right, or prescription drugs, and it ends up being a problem. So whether it's alcohol related or, like I said, recreational or prescription drugs, it is an issue for our culture. Now, I read that you are a recovering alcoholic and you have been sober since 2012, so we gotta give it up. For getting the help that you needed. Do you attribute it to the stress of your environment, the hood, in terms of why you really felt like you started using the alcohol heavy? And then second, which I love the last album, Book of Ryan. And there was a song on there that really resonated with me, called Outside. And you were talking about how your son was afraid of drinking, right? And I also read that he was actually the motivating factor. So I just want to know, is that kind of true? Is it not? Or
Yeah.
how did what role did your son and kids play?
It's flipped around.
Okay.
I'm afraid of him drinking. So that's what I was telling him on the song.
Okay.
That's cool.
Okay.
I was telling him that on the
I'm a
song.
little rusty on the lyrics, you know.
No, but that's what it should have been.
Okay.
Thank God my oldest is a boy. Because if it had been a girl,
Oh, I see.
she would have known.
Mm-hmm.
The girls know everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, but my son, he's just into what he was into, playing basketball. And thank God he was oblivious to a lot of things that I did. You know, and thank God that I decided to stop when I did because he was just becoming of age where he was gonna start paying attention.
Now, were you already heavy into drinking when your kids were born?
No.
Or when did this start?
Yeah, when
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, when my first son was born, I had started drinking it. You know,
What year was that?
he was born in '97. He was born in '97. Yeah, so I took my first drink in 21 with Dr. Dre.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And I was
Is that when they wanted to offer you that deal?
around that time.
Okay.
Around that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was just because I didn't want to say no.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it was Dr. Dre.
Pressure,
I
peer
just didn't want
pressure,
to say
it's
no.
all good.
But he wasn't pressuring me. You know,
He was just offering you a drink.
I was just a kid.
That's right.
You know, I was just a kid doing as the Romans do. You know.
When in Rome.
And one thing that my dad did teach me, one thing he did tell me was stay away from all of that stuff because you're not wired. Like I actually went to rehab with my father.
Oh, really?
I went to rehab with him. I was sitting in
Now
rehab
that's
with him.
deep.
Yeah, so we knew it was in our lineage, you know,
Yes.
like all of my, my uncles and everybody, everybody had their own issues.
My uncle was an alcoholic.
Yeah,
And
everybody
I
had.
begged my uncle to stop drinking now.
Yeah. Yeah, I never looked at it like it was even a big thing until my big brother started doing it. He started abusing drinking. He would come into the house drunk, and him and my dad would always get into it, and I used to hate that. I just used to be like, man, I don't want to drink because I don't want to go through this.
Right.
I'm an athlete, and then I got into the music business, and I just lost myself. I just turned into, whatever the music business turns you into, like. And maneuvering through this business, you have to stand for something. You gotta have some type of moral compass. You gotta have some type of center.
Right.
Otherwise, you just, the universe is just gonna push you around, So,
How many years do you think you were in that struggle of dealing with alcohol?
all the way until 2012. I mean, I started drinking at 21. It wasn't heavy until maybe a few years later. I had fun that first time.
Did you think you needed a drink to write the right song?
Oh, by the time I needed a drink to write any song. I would have needed a drink to do this. I would have needed a drink to do radio. I would have needed a drink to shoot a video. I needed a drink to do a show.
Yeah, I won't say any names, but I worked with one artist, and he was a very popular R&B singer. And I'll never forget, he came to town, and I had to take him to do a radio run because I did promo for the Face. And but he wasn't signed to our label. We had done a soundtrack with him. I swear it was 8 o'clock in the morning, and I had to go stop and buy him a bottle of Hennessy. And y'all know, live by noon, that bottle was gone. And I was like, brother. And I wasn't trying to be the moral police because I'm not that girl. I'm not a snitch. And I don't try to tell people how to live their lives. But I do try to inspire you, right? Because we talked about that earlier. You've got to learn. We'll get to that a little bit later. But it's got to be something, that light has to go off inside of you to want to get that help.
Yeah.
So who, was it anyone that encouraged you or anyone that took you to a meeting to get help?
No, but the first person in the hip hop business that made any kind of comment to me was Eminem.
Really?
He was the first person. Yeah, I was at his studio and we were sitting in the office, and just out of nowhere he was like, "Yo, if you ever feel like you got a problem, you can tell me, right?" And
I respect you for that.
it kind of messed with me a little bit because I didn't know if he was implying that he thought that I had a problem. Because I certainly thought I was doing a good job of hiding it. So I just, it kind of stuck with me a little bit.
Yeah.
My mom made some comments. My dad had made some comments. My wife, she was a walking comment, you know what I mean? So
That's what wives do.
like all of the key people in my life had something to say. You know what I mean? And,
Well, they loved you.
yeah. But at that moment you get defensive.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Everybody's taking a shot at you. You know what I mean?
That's
So
right.
I just kind of like, and then one day I woke up in a hotel room in New York and had this overwhelming feeling. it's time to stop. You know, and I was like, just tired of making really bad decisions, tired of really bad things happening. I had already went to jail for a year for drinking and driving.
Did you really?
Yeah, got in car accidents.
Oh no.
It was like I was trying to hurt myself. I had went so long without being famous, and then I became famous again. And then like famous plus the internet, plus being an alcoholic, all bad.
That's right.
All bad. No good.
Yeah.
No good.
No bueno.
So, and then, you know, everybody coming around me with some type of motive or agenda. And me considering myself a pretty relatively good person.
A motive or agenda in terms of trying to like get in your pockets or trying to help steer you in a different direction?
No motive to do anything good.
Okay, I see.
You know what I mean? Like, when you putting out
It's
that...
so unfortunate because when you own, boy,
Yeah,
motherfuckers be coming out the woodwork. Like,
But when you own and you putting out negative energy constantly too,
yeah, that's true.
you inviting in all the crazies.
You get back what you put out.
Yeah, so it's like I was just inviting crazy people around, crazy people coming around me, being crazy people, you know, and it was just like,
It's been tough for your family, I'm sure.
yeah, it was really tough for my family. And I was just like, you know, me and my wife, we've been together since I was 17 years old. So
Oh, high school sweetheart.
yeah, so
That's dope.
I told myself, I was like, yo, before I got into the business, I was like, yo, I want to leave here with everything that I came here with. I want to leave with. And I wasn't talking about money. I'm talking about my family.
That's right. Did you ever feel that you were threatened to lose your family?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was. I was right there. I was right there. My wife was like, you know, so I couldn't let that happen. You know, and it took a long time for things to get back normal. And it's not exactly normal yet. Still, it's still a work in progress. My relationship I'm talking about.
Okay.
It's still a work in progress.
How often did you go to AA meetings?
I started out going to them a little bit. I didn't really like them, to be honest with you, because they make me sad. They make me sad. The last time I went to one, somebody asked me for a picture.
Oh.
Yeah, so I just don't like AA meetings, but for me, for me. So, you know, some people in the sobriety world, they swear by AA
They do.
meetings. They feel
Some
like
people need them.
Yeah, they feel like if you don't go to them, then you're not taking the steps.
Right.
I disagree with that, but I do encourage people to go to AA meetings.
Because everybody's situation is different. Even like for me, I never considered myself an alcoholic, but I drank socially a lot. You know, working in the business, traveling all the time on the road, award shows, all that good stuff. And so when I was going through my own suicidal ideation, you know, I felt like I was using alcohol as a crutch. So you know, you come home after work, you have a drink, a wine, I have a glass of wine or a cocktail. Well, one cocktail turned into two turned into three. It's a party of one. I'm at the crib by myself, and I knew that I had to address that issue. And that was, and alcohol is depressing anyway, right? So it was making me depressed, and it was really playing with my mind, and I think it was a contributing factor to me having a suicidal ideation as well. And I kind of want to pivot next to talk about if you ever experienced suicidal ideation. On that same album, on the Book of Ryan, there's a song called Strong Friend, which is probably my favorite song from that album because so much of what you said resonated with me. And I feel like I'm that strong person, right, for my friends and my family. I'm assuming that you may have experienced your own suicidal ideation. I heard you talk about it in that song. You got to check up on your strong friends and you don't want to call people crazy. What was that like for you, the anxiety and depression and the suicidal ideation?
Well, I didn't necessarily have suicidal ideation, but I think I kept myself out of certain mind frames just by staying heavily medicated from alcohol. It did a thing to me where it made me feel like nothing was wrong. And I didn't start to really...
Did it make you invincible?
Yeah, I was invincible. I could fight a bear. You better put your money on, you better pray for the bear.
That's right.
Yeah,
And
so,
they, you know, when you got that liquid courage in you, that's what they say, right?
yeah, so I kind of kept myself like that. And when it came to drinking, I was the best. You know what I mean? I was the best. I was the champion. So you know, I just
what
kept myself.
What was your drink of choice? Just out of curiosity, not glorifying it at all.
I started with Bacardi Limon, which was disgusting. I started with that, and then I moved on to Patron Silver. So it was between 1800 Silver and Patron Silver. I was a tequila guy. Yeah. And I used to just drink it straight. I just pour a water bottle out, empty, and then just refill the water bottle with Patron, and I just have it with me the whole day.
Now, when you started going to AA and dealing with that, were you in therapy at that time?
I started therapy as soon as I decided to stop drinking. That's when I started therapy.
Okay.
Prior to that,
You know
I had an outlook on therapy that was inaccurate,
Tell us
just
about
like
that.
all of my other black friends.
Yeah. How do we look at therapy in black culture?
We look at it like some type of weakness. Either it's looked at as some type of weakness, or it's looked at as something that you don't go to that unless you're crazy. We don't need therapy. I'm not going to no therapy.
What is
that's
some
all I
stranger
hear.
gonna tell me that
Yeah.
I don't know already about myself?
Yeah, so you're an alcoholic, so I see why you need therapy. But it's like what I learned in therapy is it's not even about being an addict. I suggest it to anybody because knowledge of self is the way to improve.
It is.
And there's so much about ourselves that we don't know. A lot of information about ourselves has been purposely withheld from us. So
Especially since the days of slavery.
yeah,
They
of
never
course.
wanted us to be proud of who we were,
Of
proud
course.
of our heritage, proud of our culture.
Yeah, so when I started going to therapy and learning about myself, that's when I realized I had anxiety. I never knew, I've heard of anxiety, but I never knew what those feelings were.
What were some of those feelings like?
It always, to me, felt a nervous feeling. Like I played basketball, I played heavy sports, and I was always nervous in the game. And it wasn't until I was able to shake the nervousness that I can actually perform well. But while I was nervous, I could do nothing good. So, and then it grew into just, I would get those feelings when I'm around people that I don't know. So, I kind of chalk that up to maybe I'm just not a people person. I'm not comfortable around people I don't know. Maybe I'm not a people person. And then I got to this point where I couldn't hold a conversation with somebody properly. Like you would be talking, but while you're talking, instead of me listening, I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to say next? So I'm focusing more on impressing you in the conversation than I am engaging in the conversation. And if I didn't do that, I would feel nervous. Yeah, so and that's anything that I didn't know for sure. If I could do well, I would feel that way. So it's rooted in confidence as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, when you first started going to therapy, because I tell people sometimes, therapy's a lot like Tinder. You got to keep swiping until you find the right one. Was it, or whatever the hottest app is? That Tinder joke worked last year, might not work. I don't know what y'all want.
I got a Tinder joke on my house.
But did you end up seeing more than one therapist until you found the right one, or what was that process like for you?
I got lucky. The first guy was the right guy.
That's great, because that did not happen for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see.
How did you find him? Were you recommended from a doctor or somebody?
Marshall.
Your family?
Marshall did.
Oh, M recommended.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay.
He was the guy he was talking to.
Was he?
I think he has another guy that he's talking to too, but he suggested this guy to me, and I've been seeing him ever since.
Was he, or can I ask, is he white or black?
White.
Interesting.
White, yeah.
And nothing is wrong with that. And I think it's important for us to bring that up as it relates to therapy, because sometimes we, people of color, feel like we can't go to someone who doesn't look like us, right? Because they won't understand us.
I can see that.
But that's why I tell people it really is an individual process, right? No one person's emotional health and wellness journey is the same. It's not a linear process, right? It looks more like this, right? Zigzagging all over the place. So you got to find the right cocktail, if you will, non-alcoholic, that fits what's your recipe for wellness, right? That fits your recipe and what that looks like. Because what I do does not look like what Cameron does. And our team is here, Cameron, Free, and Portia, and we've all dealt with whether it's anxiety or stress, and Cameron talks openly about her depression and anxiety, but I don't need the same meds that Cameron has, right? Because my chemical imbalance is completely different from what she's experiencing.
Right.
And I initially had a white therapist when I was working in New York City. I was at Arista Records, and I first went to this white lady, and that was the first time that I was really able to unpack and talk about my dad's suicide. I cried like a baby, but I had hid that for so long, but it was okay for me. But fast forward to everything I've been through now, I just felt like a lot of these people didn't understand me, and I had an older white gentleman that I went to last year, and I was like, it's just not working for me. And so oftentimes there's this thing called cultural competency. So when clinicians get their training, they're supposed to go through cultural competency training. And that means that they are sensitive to the nuances of your culture, whether you're Black, Asian, in the Latino community, what have you. You have to understand what people are going through, what their experiences are, and so that you can also kind of meet them where they're at. So I'm actually glad, though, that you actually found somebody that didn't look like you. And
our common bond was alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay, so that was that.
We got together to speak about that, and through that, everything else kind of came out. Like he's not even like certified to speak to me about a lot of the issues that I had growing up, but everything kind of started with the addiction, and there was a mutual understanding of the addiction, and it just kind of went from there. And then like just me talking to him opened me up to talk to more people. So I talk to all my friends who are knowledgeable, and I talk to people all the time, and it all helps me. The conversation me and you had back there helped me, you know what I mean? Like, so, but I can see where it would be important to find somebody.
Yeah, and
like
so I just, as you guys, maybe, some of you need therapy, maybe you don't, but and I tell people, therapy isn't just for when something is wrong. People be like, therapists ain't nothing wrong with me. Well, sometimes, y'all, it's good to just have somebody to talk to that you don't know, right? From an objective perspective it's almost kind of like a life coach. But if you are dealing with if you find yourself always mad or irritable or feeling that funny, feeling on the inside, it may be that your body, right, is manifesting other problems and it's coming out where it looks like depression or anxiety. And so you got to get to the root of that problem. So guess what? You may need to see a professional. I know a lot of people in our community also say therapy is expensive. That's true. Therapy can be expensive, but there are a lot of clinicians out there that charge on a sliding scale, which means that, they'll charge you what you're making. It's online therapy, and we can talk about some resources afterwards, but I just don't want y'all to get discouraged thinking that there are no options out there. There's a local organization right in East Atlanta, Chris 180, and they partner with the Arthur Blank Foundation, and they opened up a new clinic in East Atlanta, and guess what, y'all? It's free. So there are resources out there, and you just can't be afraid to get the help that you need. How did your friends respond to you getting the help, and were you able to help anybody else kind of get help, whether it was from alcoholism or substance abuse in other forms or anything?
Yeah, I helped a lot of people. I mean, as soon as the word got out there, as soon as people seen that I was willing to be forthcoming with my issues and just with information in general, I got random calls from a lot of people. But as far as my real friends just took the steps to make sure that they had my back. Even my friends in Slaughterhouse, I'm in a group called Slaughterhouse, so we were about to start when I first decided to get sober.
You got a lot of slashes going on. Working with Premier and
we were about to start an album, and I had to get all of them on the phone and tell them I wasn't ready.
Okay.
I'm gonna get sober, and they all told me, "Yo, we got your back.
That's dope.
We got your back 100%." And that's really all I needed at that time, as far as my male friends, and then some of the ones that I thought were my friends, they kind of faded off to the back.
And that's okay, y'all.
Yeah,
it's okay to let go of those relationships.
Yeah,
because if it's toxic to your recovery, you'll need them in your life anyway.
Somebody asked me, how did you cleanse that? When you decided to stop drinking, how did you cut off the fat in terms of people? And I was like, I didn't have to do it.
They just fell off.
All I did was get sober. As soon as you do that, there was an instant disconnect.
And no judging to those folks, right? Because oftentimes they're just not at a point where they can deal with those demons, right? And they probably, I would imagine that a lot of them were looking at you silently, damn, bro, I wish I could do that. But not everybody has the courage to get
either that, or I'm acting funny, or
that too.
I don't want to loan you
$5 billion.
More than not,
people want to get help, right? And they want to do better, but they just